My session, c'est Youth and Gender, les jeunes et genre. Je pense que vraiment c'est un créneau très important, surtout si on parle des ODD, des objectifs de développement durable. C'est le cinquième objectif qui est l'égalité. Et surtout si on lit avec, bien sûr, le, la jeunesse, si on regarde bien sûr le rapport, c'était le rapport des Nations Unies en octobre 2020. Le Conseil des droits de l'homme des Nations Unies, bien sûr, il a adopté une résolution historique qui met l'accent sur la nécessité spécifique pour les États de protéger, bien sûr, les enfants et les jeunes contre les dommages environnementaux. Et on va vraiment en parler parce que c'est dans ce cadre que vraiment tout le monde doit bouger pour préserver, bien sûr, les droits de la future génération. Et en ce qui concerne, bien sûr, l'approche par le genre, je pense qu'il y a vraiment toute une histoire autour de l'intégration du concept genre, surtout dans les stratégies de développement. Bien sûr, en premier lieu, il avait des étapes bien définies lorsqu'on parle d'intégrer la femme au développement, lorsqu'on parle femmes et développement, lorsqu'on parle bien sûr, surtout maintenant avec l'approche genre et développement, ça sera vraiment génial de se concerter, surtout pour l'apport de la société civile dans ce cadre. Je laisse la parole, bien sûr, à notre premier, bien sûr, la première présentation. Elle sera, c'est le statut, challenge and apparition of the youth in wetland protection in Africa with our colleague. Je pense que je ne devais pas vraiment prononcer le nom complet, c'est Thandeka Ndlela. Et à toi, bien sûr, de me corriger parce que je pense que j'ai pas bien défini le nom. Voilà. À toi.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me and you can see
Good
my
morning.
capture.
Yes, it's all working. Thank you, Thandeka.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Thandeka Ndlela. I am based in between Eswatini or Swaziland, as some of you might know it, and South Africa as well. So that's where I do most of my work. I do most of my work in Swaziland, though. So a lot of the examples that I'm going to be sharing with you today are going to be from the perspective of Swaziland. Today I'm here on behalf of Youth Engaged in Wetlands to share a presentation to you about the status, challenges, and aspirations of the youth in wetland protection. So Youth Engaged in Wetlands is a youth-led volunteer network that's dedicated to the conservation and wise use of wetlands. The network was created in 2018. If you can look at the map here on the right, you can see that we're pretty much spread out throughout the entire world. This map needs updating because there's 15 of us right now, 15 young professionals or volunteers that are located around the world and working to reach the objectives of Youth Engaged in Wetlands. Our mission is to provide a platform for young people to enable and empower them to protect and promote wetlands around the world. That QR code is just going to take you to our website, but I also put it at the end so we can skip that for now. Next slide, please. So in 2020, we did an online survey to assess the status of youth engagement across wetland conservation and wise use around the globe. So the purpose of the survey was to establish a baseline of the role of youth and opportunities and constraints for them to work on wetland issues at local, national, or international levels. Next slide, please. So we received a total of 88 responses from young people working in 31 different countries. We found that there was a significant imbalance in the number of female participants. I think this is also true in the ground, like when you do a lot of wetland work, there's a very significant imbalance with the women that are participating, actively researching, or just involved in wetland conservation. So we found that nearly 70% of the respondents were male. Africa had surprisingly one of the highest number of responses, third to only the Latin American and Caribbean and Asia regions. The sex distribution of the participants in Africa as well showed a significant imbalance in the number of female participants, with 88 respondents being male as well, which is very quite sad and is also true like when you go to the ground. We found that the most common wetland type that people work in is riverine wetlands. And this is a problem because a lot of other wetland types, such as peatlands, are not being actively studied, especially in Southern Africa. For example, in Swaziland, the peatlands that I am working on were first documented in 2018. So that is a huge problem. 88% of the respondents highlighted finances as one of the barriers to youth engagement in wetland conservation and wise use. And this includes unsustainable funding, short-based project funding, and difficulty in securing funds. They also highlighted that there's a general lack of awareness and understanding and knowledge of the importance of wetlands at community level, political level, and among different stakeholders. For example, in Swaziland or Eswatini, there is no adopted national wetland policy, although the wetland policy was written and it exists, but it still hasn't been passed by government, which makes it hard to actually enforce some of the recommendations on the actual ground. A lot of the wetlands also in countries like Eswatini are found in the rural areas, and these fall under the common property or public goods resource type, which means that they are free to be used by the community, and you find that most of the time they're unsustainably used or drained, and that also makes it difficult to enforce the recommendation of the National Wetland Policy that I talked about. Next slide, please. So what are the next steps? Like, what do we do with all this information? Where do we go from here? So what was highlighted from the survey was that the youth wants to be a key stakeholder of the Ramsar, and I think all of us here can agree that that is extremely important. I think it's also important that we support youth and youth-led initiatives for wetland conservation and wise use. Another thing is that we need to have intergenerational cooperation in decision making when we are talking about issues related to wetland conservation, especially in Southern Africa. Intergenerational cooperation is extremely important because something that we tend to overlook, especially as natural scientists, is indigenous knowledge. So if we incorporate that with the knowledge we have now, then we will be successful in wetland conservation. And I also want to touch on the youth resolution, which was also discussed at the last Ramsar Convention. I think it's important that we have to appoint a national. So these were the resolutions of the youth resolution. Firstly, to appoint a national youth focal point for each contracting party. It would be very good to have like more African countries that do this. I'm already advocating for this in Eswatini because that's where I'm from. So one of the other resolutions was to establish a youth working group. This has been completed. Australia is the chair. So other contracting parties are also invited to join the youth working group. The youth working group has also developed a youth work plan, and it's currently being implemented. Another thing is to incorporate youth into other Ramsar Convention working groups. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are just some of the activities that we have participated in this year in 2024 as youth working in Southern Africa. It's part of the World Wetlands Day celebrations. So the first picture there on the right, the one on the top, is from Eswatini, which is one of the peatlands that I work in. We invited a nearby school to celebrate World Wetlands Day. So we took them to the field to pick them up because usually schools cannot afford to actually take their students on field trips. So this was a very lovely experience for them, just teaching them about wetlands and like introducing them to how it's like. So many of them are interested in actually taking this up and possibly working formally in wetlands in the future. The picture at the bottom is from Pretoria, South Africa, also part of World Wetlands Day celebration. You can see those kids are much younger, but they already know so much about wetlands. So we're just trying to create the next generation of wetland scientists. Also aiming to create awareness on wetlands and aligning this with the school curriculum. And this is also a way in which we capacitate citizen scientists. Next slide, please. Okay, so as the youth, these are some of the aspirations that we have. Firstly, we hope to get sustainable funding mechanisms and fundraising techniques. I think we can all agree that that is extremely important. We also think that it's very important to continue community engagement. And also, we also think it's important to continue wetland restoration and have monitoring and evaluation techniques. Another thing is that we think it's important for advocacy and policy making and wetland identification and mapping. Like I said, like I mentioned before, that the first officially documented peatland in Swaziland was in 2018. So we are still lagging very much behind in terms of wetland identification and mapping. And we also think that measuring greenhouse gas emissions is extremely important. And that's what I'm currently doing in Swaziland, but I'm only one person and I can only do so much. So it's very important that we try and keep up to places in the Northern Hemisphere. And also the youth feels that it would be amazing if they were equipped with soft skills such as leadership and conflict management, which is why I think it's also important that we are a key stakeholder in the Ramsar Convention, so we learn some of these skills. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to present today. That is our email as Youth Engaged in Wetlands, and QR code is our website. And please join our mailing list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for you. It's a pleasure to say that the resolution of Rapture is connected with youth. Maintenant, je passe pour la présentation de Monsieur Pasco Twinamasiko. Pardon pour le nom. Empowerment of Change, Youth and Climate Change across sub-Saharan Africa. À vous l'honneur, monsieur. Merci. Voilà la présentation. Oui.
Hello, can you hear me?
Pasco, bienvenue. Voilà, c'est à vous de parler, de présenter votre travail.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Oui, je t'entends, bien sûr.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm so much privileged to join in today. Yeah, and my presentation is particularly some pieces of research we picked around the use and maybe the women engaged or involved in wetland conservation from a series of activities we have done in the past few years. Well, I'm Pasco and I'm a team leader at Bioecosystem Conservation and Development Agency. It's a youth-based civil society organization in Uganda. At least we are very lucky that we are part of the World Wetland Network, and at least we have always got some support, a lot of support, including resources, of which we have always tried to disseminate through various channels to the communities and schools, yeah, but particularly in the rural areas. Yeah, and over the years, Bioecosystem Conservation and Development Agency has been engaged in a series of activities. Yeah, we have a very broad program on wetlands. So we are developing a wetland management plan. It's called the Kisanga Karagara Wetland Management Plan, and it comprises of over 7 wetlands, and it's so much broad, involving livelihood, biodiversity inventory, research, yeah, maybe gender empowerment, especially towards wetland conservation. Well, some of our research findings may be across sub-Saharan Africa. We have been looking onto the large perspective. Let's say, take a look like in Kenya. There have been some programs that have been developed and they are supporting the youth who are in wetland conservation, which is not the case like here in Uganda. Here in Uganda, the part of wetland conservation, it's a little bit neglected. It has been neglected, but maybe currently they are trying to boost, because the Ministry of Water and Environment currently realizes that investing in nature-based solution is some kind of a crucial way on how we can curb or tackle climate change. And therefore, they are putting in a lot of efforts to do what? To make sure that they apply nature-based solutions, and particularly in wetlands. Well, through our intervention, we have tried to reach out to women, especially in our area of focus, like in Western Uganda. We have some broad wetland program in Western Uganda, and some time back, we're doing some interviews of women who are utilizing wetlands and other women who are utilizing wetlands directly and indirectly, and we are questioning them. We had some sort of questions like interviews. What is their intervention? How are they affected? And really, we got a lot of feedback that at least we have we have also tried to input in the latest NDC update by the ministry, because we got chance to participate there. And then if we are to look across on the broader perspective, now let's say like in the rest part of Africa, we see due to wetland destruction, there are lots of severe and negative impacts that are really taking place, and they are really affecting the world population. But particularly, you'll find out that women, especially, that is in the rural areas, of most African countries, they are the ones who are most prone to those negative effects of climate change and maybe wetland destruction. Then, over time, we have at least tried to develop some solutions, especially in the area where we are intervening in Western Uganda. Let's say, for instance, on this program we are working on, the Kisanga-Karaga Wetland Management Plan. There, we are trying to promote collaborative wetland management. So one of the factors, or one of the findings, we found out that it was leading to high wetland destruction rate. It was that there wasn't a lot of collaboration between the government and maybe the local communities which are in the vicinity of those wetlands. So you find out that the government is employing the top to bottom conservation or management approach, and then the way of implementing these policies, it's a little bit kind of harder and harsh to adhere by those communities in the proximity of those wetlands. So at times you'd find out that the government comes in with military, they will do like demarcate the buffer zones. After demarcating, immediately the community will come and uproot all those demarcation measures or modes. So one of the areas which we wanted to address, it was promoting amicable collaborative wetland management, and of which we have tried to achieve. At least we have tried to bring the government authorities and some communities in a proximity of certain wetlands in which we are implementing the wetland management plan. And the communities have worked hand in hand and even given a helping hand, especially in the activities of wetland demarcation, as opposed to when the government was using the top-bottom approach, which wasn't yielding a lot of efforts. Instead, it was bringing a lot of conflicts there. And maybe we have also tried to tackle on the issue of livelihood improvement. Yeah, we have partnered with some companies, tourism companies, and all those, especially which are in the hospitality and tourism, as our research findings it depicted that most of the wetlands in Uganda lie within the primary tourism zone, irrespective of high levels of illiteracy or unawareness by the communities, the grassroots communities in the vicinity of those wetlands, to efficiently and sustainably utilize those wetlands. Thus, we have collaborated with some companies which are helping us carry out some events. Especially, we are developing one of the wetlands. Actually, we are developing. It's called the Kisanga wetland, and we are trying to develop and promote it more as a wetland ecotourism project. Then this Easter on 31st, we have established some permanent partnership with some companies. They will be doing some tourism events, of course, in the nearby natural resources, the lake. There will be racing boats. But all those strategies are meant to boost the livelihoods of people. One mode we have embarked on boosting those livelihoods of people living in the vicinity of wetlands is tourism. We just want to empower them and support them to boost their livelihoods economically, such that they reduce over-dependency on wetlands. That's a lot, and as some findings that Uganda has got one of the youngest population in the whole world. And if we are also to check on our population statistics, you find out that 60% these are youth. Thus, there is a very great urge for the youth to be so much involved in wetland conservation. Wetland conservation, we categorize it as one of the land management activity. And most young people, especially here in Uganda, they are not so much into that activity simply because it requires a lot of, it is a little bit risky. It's so much risky. Like for instance, there was some activities we carried out demarcating a wetland, but then all over the sudden we had invited the government officials and they didn't show up. But when the event was done and then we were sharing them with the reports and maybe field reportings, videos, pictures, these people were alarmed with that why are we demarcating? And they could not get it. They were so much worried that the demarcation could not go on very well. So it's some kind of an activity that is still not so much engaged by the youth. Most of the youth are in awareness creation, tree planting, but very few are just into that stuff of wetland conservation. The fact that it is having some kind, it's very sensitive because there's that land management issue. So this is like the youth and the gender have to be.
Okay. Pasco, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It's too interesting. Bien sûr, les jeunes, vraiment, ils sont maintenant conscients de leur rôle. Alors, on passe pour notre troisième. Oui, Pasco. Merci pour bien sûr, votre engagement et merci pour la présentation. C'était très intéressant et après, on va en discuter. On passe pour notre troisième présentation. C'est Empowering Youth and Women on the Kafue Flats for Sustainable. Bien sûr, à toi. Floyd Steven, à toi la parole.
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying thanks to all the presenters for those great presentations. I've learned a lot. My name is Kelvin Floyd. I'm from Zambia, working for the International Crane Foundation. Without further ado, allow me to go straight to my presentation. That's just the presentation overview. Next slide, please. So the Kafue Flats is a wetland of international importance in Zambia. It's one of the 8 wetlands of international importance that we have. And the Kafue Flats in particular is located on the southern and central parts of Zambia. It is a very important wetland. It contributes 50% of hydro generation, 20% national beef production, 7% fisheries, 44% water supply, and 89% of sugar. And this particular wetland is surrounded by 7 chiefdoms. So you can see that it's a very important wetland to the nation of Zambia and also to the local communities. The next slide just shows the location of the Kafue Flats, which covers 6,500 square kilometers. And then those are the 7 chiefdoms that are surrounding the Kafue Flats. As the International Crane Foundation, we understand that this is a very important wetland for the communities as well as for the nation. So in understanding that, we've also come to learn that despite its importance, there are a lot of threats that are affecting these important wetlands. Some of the threats include unsustainable fishing activities. We've seen a lot of fishing camps that are becoming more permanent on the Kafue Flats, but we've also seen alien invasive plant species such as Mimosa pigra, which is covering over 3,000 hectares. We've also seen other alien invasive plant species like Salvinia moesta, water hyacinth, Limnobium lavigatum, typha, and papyrus. All these are impacting the wetland ecosystem. So in trying to restore this important habitat and ecosystem, we have been engaged, and we've engaged youths on various ways. So our work on the Kafue Flats under the Kafue Flats Restoration Partnership is actually anchored on 4 pillars, which are law enforcement, community engagement, ecological restoration, and research and monitoring. I'm sure you can see the photo there, which is the photo of the 55 community scouts, which we trained in the year 2022, most of which are youths and women. So we've engaged the communities through recruitment of community scouts through the community resource boards. These are people who are recruited from the communities to help in restoring or to help in safeguarding the natural resources to reduce the poaching activity. So that's how we're working through law enforcement, but we're also engaging communities through sensitization, through school outreach activities, and then through ecological restoration. We are actually actively involved in clearing the alien invasive plant species to restore this critical habitat for the wildlife. I should mention that the Kafue Flats actually holds the largest population of wattled cranes, about 30% of wattled cranes, which are registered or listed as vulnerable on the IUCN list, are found on the Kafue Flats. So we're trying to restore this important habitat, which is also home to an endemic herbivore known as Kafue lechwe. Next slide, please. So through our work how are we engaging youths? So we're engaging youths through law enforcement, in which in 2022, we actually trained 55 community scouts, of which 70% of the youths people who were trained were the youths, and then 14.5% were women. I should mention that 14.5% seems to be a low number, but this is coming from a situation where there was almost 0% of women involvement in law enforcement, because this is a job that is considered as a man's job. So this is a man-dominated job. So moving from 0% to 14.5% was a big step in this process in engaging youths in sustainable conservation. Since 2017, we've been engaging youths and other people to restore the alien invasive plant species, which I've mentioned in my introduction, that it's occupying over 3,000 hectares and it's continuing to expand. So since 2017, we've engaged over 400 youths by giving them seasonal jobs. And so far, we've seen the restoration of over 2,400 hectares that we've restored through pairing of alien invasive plant species. And also, we have actually engaged communities and youth through conservation clubs. In the year 2022, we launched a program that we entitled Sports for Conservation, in which we invited schools around the Kafue Flats to come and compete through drama, sketches, poetry, football. We understand that football is one sport that attracts masses in local communities. So we came up with this program so that we can engage youths, and we take advantage of the gathering that comes to attend sports activities to just raise awareness on the importance of restoring habitats. And through this work, we have seen a reduction in illegal activities such as poaching. By recruiting the community scouts, we've seen that the numbers of an endemic lechwe that have been going down have actually reduced now. So poaching activities have reduced. I should also mention that by recruiting the community members through invasive species alien removal program, their presence in the national park has been deterring poachers. So that has also helped in securing the wildlife. But we've also gotten confirmation from the traditional leaders, the chiefs, that by engaging youths into a meaningful employment, they've actually reduced activities such as theft in the communities, because now youths have been empowered. So these are some of the results that we have seen by engaging youths. Next slide, please. So through engaging youths and women, we've learned that youth and gender inclusion in conservation amplify effectiveness. What do we mean by saying this? I should mention that in these rural areas, women are marginalized in jobs like community scouts engagement because these are considered as jobs for men. But for the first time, having 14.5% of women has actually encouraged other men to start allowing their women now to be actively engaged in conservation, because what we used to see before in engaging women is that they would come to attend meetings, but other than that, there was less engagement of women. So we deliberately said, okay, it is important that women are engaged in conservation. And I should also mention that women have a very big influence in rural communities because they're the ones who are always looking out for resources to feed their families. So by engaging them, by empowering them, actually, this has actually improved our effectiveness in conservation, but also the sustainable use of resources. Next slide, please. And as a result of inclusion of youths and women, we have seen that there's an improved awareness of the impacts of alien invasive plant species, because most of the people have now come to understand the negative impacts that the alien invasive species have on the grazing land. Like I've mentioned, that the Kafue flax is very important for the local communities for grazing their livestock. So now they've come to understand the impacts of the invasive species on the habitat. And one of the things that we also try to do is to train the communities to at least try to create an income generation venture by, instead of just cutting the alien invasive plant species, we've trained them to generate or to produce charcoal briquettes, which is actually an environmental friendly product from use of the alien invasive plant species. And we've also seen that the local community, in the year 2021, we conducted a study which we named the environmental cash transfer. In this particular study, we're trying to see how the people that we've engaged in clearing the alien invasive plant species, Mimosa pigra, are using the money. So we undertook this study to just see how the money is being used, and we came to learn that there is actually an improvement in the local community's economy. People have been empowered, some have bought livestock, some have actually become more resilient to hunger. Right now, as I'm speaking, in Zambia, we are experiencing a dry spell, or drought, should I call it. And the people that we've been engaging are actually quite resilient to this dry spell. But overall, we have seen that there is high support for conservation. We were actually working on formulating the game management plan for the Kafue flat ecosystem. And I mentioned that there are actually 7 chiefdoms, but because of how we've engaged the youths, the communities, and the women, we had all the chiefs from the 7 chiefdoms participating in the formulation of the game management plan, and other community leaders also came to support. So we have learned that by including women and youths, and remember that in Zambia, the majority are young people. So by engaging youths to come up with maybe plays or sketches to sensitize their peers, they actually have an influence on their peers. And this has actually overall resulted in high support for conservation. And this high support for conservation has actually resulted in an improved habitat and protection for endangered species. Wattled cranes, the picture there, it's actually the wattled cranes, which the Kafue flat holds 30% of the global population. So it is important that in as much as we're facing these challenges in wetland conservation, such as alien invasive plant species, climate change, that we remember to engage youths, women, and the community for sustainable conservation. Thank you for your attentiveness.
Thank you. Thank you. Floyd, it's a pleasure to hear this result. And I say that that the three presentation is very important, but je ne trouve pas des questions. Pas de questions. Je pense que est-ce que c'est tout clair, tout est clair ou est-ce que on peut vraiment interagir d'une autre façon? Voilà. Je pense que à travers le chat, j'ai bien réalisé qu'il y a des commentaires autour par exemple, pour la troisième présentation. Est-ce que je peux vraiment avoir une intervention pour les présentations? Voilà, je pense que c'est donner la main à... C'est qui? C'est... voilà, Jean-Robert. Voilà, je peux donner la parole à Monsieur Jean-Robert.
Oui, merci pour la parole. Est-ce que vous me suivez?
Bien sûr.
Merci pour la parole. Je suis Jean-Robert Mboasekoli. J'appelle à partir de la République démocratique du Congo. Précisément, nous œuvrons dans la province du Sud-Ubangi, dans l'ex-Équateur à Guémena.
Très bien.
Alors, je voudrais poser la question aux trois intervenants parce qu'ils ont insisté, ils ont plus mis l'accent sur le jeune. Or, à part le travail qu'ils ont abattu, c'est un travail très appréciable et c'est la raison d'ailleurs pour laquelle je les félicite tous les trois. Et la question est celle de savoir est-ce qu'il y a des politiques de stimulation ou de motivation pour permettre à ces jeunes de vouloir garder la ligne de la formation qu'ils ont suivie, ou parce que nous savons généralement chez nous en Afrique, les jeunes sont tentés d'aller en Europe. Alors, si jamais les jeunes n'arrivent pas à faire le travail pour lequel ils ont été formés, ça risque d'être un effort vain. Alors, ma question est de savoir s'il y a une politique de motivation et de contenance de ces jeunes de manière que tôt ou tard, le travail ne soit pas perdu comme ça en l'air. Merci.
Oui, c'est la continuité et la durabilité. Oui, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec toi, Robert. Robert, oui, est-ce qu'on peut vraiment répondre à sa réflexion? Oui, c'est qui va vraiment répondre? Oui, Pasco, Floyd, Thandeka.
Yes.
Qui peut, oui, je donne la parole, je te donne la parole, à toi de parler.
I see there's a question from Witameni who's trying to find out what are the local factors that attract the local population in Zambia to become more involved in protection of wetlands. In response to this, I was just typing in the chat, but in response to this, one of the things that we've learned is it is important to engage communities in the initial stages of project implementation. One mistake that most projects do or fail is they'll plan everything without involving communities and then want to take the activities to communities. They will participate, but they will not participate fully and they will not honor the project. So by engaging communities in the initial stages of the project, it brings about ownership. For instance, in the alien removal project in which we are removing Mimosa pigra, this is a community-led project in which all the recruitments of the community workers is through the community resource boards, which is through local leadership. So by taking communities as important stakeholders and making sure that you engage them from the initial stage, that they take ownership of the project, actually brings about more involvement in the project. So that's what I can say for now. But I should also mention that when we started, we didn't have this support, but it's been through engagement with them. I'm sure I mentioned that our work on the Kafue flats is anchored on 4 pillars. We have a community relations manager whose job is to engage communities, create these relationships. So it is through relationship creation with the communities that we have seen more support now for projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Oui, je pense que vraiment il faut la voix des jeunes vraiment elle doit se lever bien sûr pour défendre surtout la bonne gouvernance, la participation active et tout. Est-ce que je peux avoir une autre réponse de la part de Youth Engaged?
Hello?
Oui.
Hey. Yes. Okay, can I give in my...
Je pense que c'est Pasco. On donne la parole à Pasco.
Yes, I can hear.
Voilà.
I can hear. Okay, my contribution, I'm going to supplement from what Kelvin has said, especially this question in the chat that is about what are the local factors that attract the local population in Zambia to be more engaged in wetland conservation. So I'm taking it on a broader perspective. Now, generally in Africa, the biggest challenge that has always crippled the government conservation efforts is that majorly most rural communities or most communities in Africa, and particularly those ones which are in the vicinity of those natural ecosystems, are always so much dependent on those ecosystems. Now, considering most of our governments in sub-Saharan Africa, if I can say, the mode of implementing most of the conservation efforts, they employ the top-to-bottom approaches or strategies. And mostly you find out that even the policies or the decisions, most of the policies to guide as far as implementation is concerned, the communities are not always engaged in those policies while they are being formulated. So you find out in the other way, it creates some kind of a conflict during the implementation using this top-to-bottom approach. So one reason, for instance, I can give out some of the case studies in the wetland management plan we have been implementing. When we compare our intervention and the government intervention, the difference is our interventions to a large extent have attained success simply because we tried to bring the local communities on board. And it's like we employed the bottom-top approach, which resulted in more collaborations between the government and the local communities. So there was a win-to-win scenario. So the communities on the ground were winning, the policy formulators and implementers, that is the government, were winning, and also the natural ecosystems in turn were winning. So everything was win-to-win. Let's say, for instance, if we are interested in a particular wetland, we come and maybe empower them, maybe through ecotourism, or try to train some of the community members. We train them in collecting baseline biodiversity data, and then they get so much.
Parce que vraiment, c'est intéressant que vous venez de présenter, mais je pense qu'on est pressé par le temps. Mais en conclusion, je pense que d'après le chat que j'ai lu, que vraiment, il faut aller vers, comment dirais-je, amener les jeunes vers les décideurs, voilà, les décideurs pour prendre des décisions rigoureuses, pour assurer un développement durable pour les futures générations. C'est très important pour lui et surtout avec l'impact changement climatique. Je pense que je vais donner la parole si à Thandeka de Youth Engaged for Wetland, si elle a à dire avant la clôture de notre session. Thandeka,
Hi, yes, I'm
hi,
here.
hi, juste pour clôturer.
I think to sum up,
Avant tout, un grand merci pour le travail que Youth Engaged for Wetland a fait. Vraiment, c'est très ambitieux. Voilà, à toi de terminer cette session.
I didn't quite get that because of the translation, but to add on what the previous colleagues said, I think sub-Saharan Africa is very different in that we don't want to aim for wetland preservation, but we want to aim for wetland conservation, because preservation implies that the wetlands should not be touched at all. And we know that in sub-Saharan Africa especially, there's a lot of people who depend on wetlands for their livelihood, whether it be the women that harvest certain grasses and use that to earn a living, or whether they need water from the wetlands. So it's always important that we constantly engage the people from the communities if we're trying to conserve those wetlands so that they understand why they're doing it and they own the wetland conservation projects themselves. Thank you.
Ok, thank you for all. Je pense que la session elle est terminée. Je laisse la parole à Chris et un grand merci pour cette belle intervention et surtout avec le projet. Vraiment, les sujets sont vraiment impressionnants et c'est bon courage pour toute la société civile dans leur quête pour les zones humides. À toi, Chris. Un grand merci.
Merci, Madame Radia. Thank you, Radia, and thank you for all of our excellent presenters, for Kelvin, Pasco, and Thandeka. There was also a question which I just wanted to bring back to Henry Kane's discussion about people with disabilities, which I think is definitely something that needs to be addressed at some point. We haven't talked about it yet. I don't know, Henry, whether you want to just mention that briefly before we close. Connor, is that possible? Henry, the floor is yours if you'd like to unmute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for giving me this small opportunity. I know it has been something which people haven't been talking. If you look very closely, as persons with disability, we're also affected in a great way when these wetlands are disrupted. So when the discussion is going on, if we have to have an afterthought that, okay, this group of people, just like what we are doing with, we have got much emphasis where we talk about women, where we talk about youth, and then at the end we say the community. Is there something which we should also do when it comes to issues to do with wetlands and disability? We have to start talking now before we go to the end and we think of it as an afterthought. I'm talking this from experience, which we have been having. Some of the discussions which we have been having in Zimbabwe, I've been keeping on putting on that issue that we should put them on the table, not to have them as an afterthought. Because some of the issues which they feel or which they have is just like talking for the youths. If you talk for the youths, you don't have their ideas. You'll be implementing what one of the speakers just said, a top-bottom approach. But if we have a bottom-top approach, we have really a quality informed issues from these people with disability. So it's high time we engage them in all our discussions at community level. It's best on a community level because most of them, they are in those communities. So in those communities, whenever we engage the community, let's engage them. Let's have them speak how they feel about. Let's give them the knowledge. That knowledge we have, let's share with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah, very good point. I think that's a group of people that we definitely should not be ignoring. And the more we can do to engage them, the better. Thanks, everybody, for these 2 days of discussions. It has been really enlightening to hear from everybody about what you're doing. Thanks very much to all of our presenters and to our moderators as well. I think you did a great job on bringing that all together. Thanks to Connor and Khulud and Imen as well, who are on the organizing committee, and to Agatha, who's the co-chair of WWN and who was here yesterday. So I think from what we heard today, there's lots of points coming up which were similar to the last time we had this type of forum. Lots of things around people's lack of awareness potentially of wetlands and lack of awareness of Ramsar. So more work to be done on that. Empowerment of people to be using the law or legislation and encouraging governments to enforce some of these laws to protect wetlands is really important. Where we see that happening, that works well, but it's still something that we have big gaps in. Engaging young people and women, still really important. It was great to hear how engaging women as decision makers in the household can have not just social impacts, but also environmental and economic impacts as well. Bringing people together, using the bottom-up approach can be really positive in terms of environmental outcomes, but also socio-economic outcomes. CSOs, so civil society organizations, again, still struggling somehow to find relevant funding. They need to be given funding, and they also need to be taken seriously by governments and given a place at the decision-making table to help them engage more with that. So thank you very much for everybody. What we will do in 4 hours from now, we will have a session to pull together the statement, the declaration that we will use on the run-up to COP15. So that will be an important tool for us to show what people will be doing across Africa and highlighting that for the COP. So if you'd like to join, please do join us at 2 o'clock UTC, and you will be welcome to help us input to that. If you do have more suggestions, please put them in the chat or on the Miro board, and we will endeavor to make sure that they are included. Zebedee, I don't know if you wanted to add a final word from the convention point of view.
Yes, Chris. First of all, I want to thank the participants for taking the time to come together and share these exciting experiences. The realization is that a lot is going on individually, and then I see a strong need for collaboration and sharing particularly with government entities, because their work can be very, very insightful and impactful, but if it is not captured or it's not known by government will never see you as a partner. So it is important that you position yourselves as partners to government rather than always like, it is good to, as the political influence, fellow plaidoyer, so complain. It is good, but always look at those things as opportunities for you to provide guidance to government, because most government people have a lot of things to do, and you are there. Government is really looking up to you. You need to look at your position or your contribution in that way. We over these 2 days, we have seen that there's a lot of challenges, but also wetlands are threatened, and you can only contribute to manage wetlands if you work together within the country and between countries. And I think this platform is a very good one. And my suggestion as we were closing is, if maybe in the next, by COP, you as African parties can really mobilize to organize one major site event where you could really come there, present your ideas, share, and then really show the world that you are part of the solution. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Zebedee. I think that's an excellent suggestion. It's very exciting that COP will be held in Africa this time. And I think we should, or you guys should, take the opportunity to really show what you can do and how you're supporting delivery of Ramsar as well. Connor and Khulud, I don't know if there are any other things before we close that you'd like to mention.
Just very briefly, thank you everyone as well, but also look in the chat for the link to the Miro board. You can also add in your suggestions there. If you need to email us, the original message that you receive from Zoom or from me will have an email address that you can also email me on for any further feedback.
Great, thank you. And Connor, for the link for this afternoon's session on the declaration, it's the same link?
It's the same link, and Zoom will email you again.
Great, excellent, sounds good. So thanks very much, everybody. Really good to see you all. Look forward to continue working with you. WWN is here to support you, and we will be at the COP. So we will be here to support any side events or activities that you would like to take advantage of. And I would certainly urge you to maybe contact me or Agatha or Connor if you have any further ideas about that. So thanks all. I look forward to seeing some of you this afternoon. Please do put your comments in. And it's been a pleasure to hear about all of the great work that's going on across the continent. Thank you, everybody.